My mother was a single parent and she was an alcoholic. It got to a stage where my stepdad, he just couldn't take it anymore. They were arguing really badly. My stepdad got down on his knees and just said to her, well, go on then, just kill me. And she stabbed him multiple times, kept saying, please don't die, please don't die.
Meet Helen Wilson, who overcame a deeply challenging upbringing and went on to build a name for herself in the luxury industry. In this episode, she shares her story for the first time and proves that anyone can overcome trauma.
I call her my mother, but I find that quite difficult to say. She didn't like me. And then when my stepfather came, he'd fallen in love with a woman who was mentally unstable and an alcoholic. I was just treated as an adult. I was the one who would go to the bank. I was the one who spoke to my dad's HR department if there was an issue, if he was off sick. And I was 11, 12 years of age.
Jeez.
When it happened, at school, I lived in a town of 157,000 people, but we were the only English family that weren't in the forces. It was documented, it was reported about.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So everybody knew. I had to go in front of 7 psychiatrists to prove that I wasn't having suicidal thoughts.
Growing up in survival mode, what does that mean to you?
I felt constantly that I always had to assess, no matter where I was, I had to assess where danger could potentially be.
How important was it for you to separate who you were from what you experienced?
It's the most powerful statement I find is that
What is happening, beautiful people? Welcome back to Empowered Human Podcast. This is Empowered Human by Empowered Human Tribe, a space for real stories, honest questions, and deep conversations about what it actually means to be human. Here, we do not rush to answers. We sit with lived experience, curiosity, and the moment that shapes us. If you are navigating growth, healing, or simply trying to understand yourself a little bit better, you are in the right place. We're going to play a little game before we start. Welcome to the podcast, Helen.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm okay, thank
doing
you.
good?
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's been a while. We've been planning this podcast episode for
It must be 3
years.
years. It's got to be
years.
3 years now. Because, it must be, because it was before I was together with my husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it must be 3 years at least.
So here we are.
I know,
it's finally happening. So I'm excited to, go deeper and, hear more about your story. Because obviously we've spoken about your story. And I hope that, a lot of people can get value from it.
I hope so too. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and taking the time, to listen to me. So.
Perfect. And before we start, I'm going to play a little game.
Okay.
All right. It's going to be, I'm going to tell you 3 statements.
Okay.
2 of them is a lie, 1 is the truth.
Okay.
So you're going to
I've got to guess which one's the lie.
Yeah.
Oh, no, which one's the truth? Which one's the truth? Okay.
Okay.
All right.
The first one is I used to play for Manchester United when I was 16. Mm-hmm. The second one is it's funny because
God.
The second one is I grew up in Nigeria. I moved to the UK when I was 15. Mm-hmm. And the third one is I love watching rugby.
Oh, that's a curveball.
That is a curveball.
Yeah. I know, because okay. Oh, okay. So it's between those last 2.
Yeah.
And I would probably say it's the middle one.
Which one is that?
That you grew up, you left Nigeria when you were 15.
Yeah, you smashed it. Well done. Your turn.
Yes, I like to win. I'm not competitive at all. Okay.
Your turn. So you're going to give me 3 statements as well.
Oh my gosh.
Pressure.
I know, it is. Okay. I speak fluent Italian.
Okay.
The next one is I actually like to have beans on toast on a Sunday night as a bit of a treat for myself and an easy meal.
Beans on toast.
And the third one is that I actually have a motorbike license.
Oh, do you know what? I can see you having a motorbike license. I can also see you eating beans and toast. Because beans and toast is elite. Italian one as well. I feel like you can speak Italian. That's a tricky one.
I've not made it easy for you.
But I've never heard you speak about a motorbike because I feel like that's a lie. I think the beans on toast is the truth.
I absolutely hate beans on toast.
No.
I was forced.
You're missing out.
I was force-fed them as a child, and I swore that I would never ever eat them again as an adult.
Jeez, yeah, okay.
So that one's a lie.
Oh, you got me. You won.
I don't speak fluent Italian.
Do you
I'm
not?
learning at the moment.
Okay.
And I do have a motorbike license.
Oh, fair play. Well done. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
I gotcha.
Yeah, you won that round. The theme we're exploring today is growing up in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm gonna ask you, what does that mean? And then I want to ask you after that, like, what does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Growing up in survival mode, I felt constantly on edge, that I didn't belong, that I was never enough, and that I always had to assess, no matter where I was, I had to assess where danger could potentially be.
Yeah.
So I would walk wherever I was, whatever environment I was in, I automatically scanned the room. I would read the energy that was there to make sure that there was no danger or to be prepared for any danger that could possibly come towards me. It felt very unsafe and lonely. And it felt like but it felt a way of life. Because I didn't know any difference. I just assumed that that's the way life was. It gave me skills, I believe. It taught me a lot.
Yeah.
And it gave me skills that I use probably automatically now in my everyday life. I'm hyper aware.
Yeah.
I pick up very, very quickly on nuances. I can read people very quickly. And I can actually feel energy.
Yeah.
So I feel energy quite strongly
Yeah.
as a result of it. So
At what point did you realize that you were growing up in a survival, like you grew up in a survival mode? Like, at what point did you like, oh, wait a minute?
I would probably say where I first really understood that wasn't how, like, how a childhood should be was when we moved to Germany when I was about 10. Until then, that was just my journey. That was just how it was.
Yeah.
When I went to Germany, I think that's when I sort of I then had, I had some friends. I think I was of interest because I was English, and
Yeah.
I was the only English person in a German school, and so kids were more intrigued about me, and so I ended up having a few more, having a couple of friends, and going to their houses and feeling like, oh, this is really calm, and there's food in the cupboards, and there was a routine, and there was like care and no shouting. And I think that's probably when I realized that, they didn't have to react in the same way that I did or have to be quite so on, on hyper alert, and it felt safe. It was the first time probably that I realized that there was such a thing as safety.
Wow.
Mm.
That's powerful.
Mm.
Now I'm intrigued to explore what life was before you moved to Germany as a young child
I
growing up.
mean, it for me, my life didn't change when I went to Germany, except for outside of the home.
Okay.
So inside the home, it was still a constant unpredictability, not knowing, what I was walking into, what I was coming home to. It was a lot of responsibility. I was never a child, so from being a very, very young age, I was just treated as an adult, as like an extension of my mother. I don't think she should have been a mother. I know that's a very big thing to say. I truly believe that there's a reason behind why she was the way she was.
Yeah.
So her childhood, her background must have been traumatic, I assume. She was very young when she had me. She was 18. And for the first 2 years of my life, she gave me to my grandparents. Where that I was 18 months to 2 years. I do have one memory from that where she came to get me, my mother, and I didn't want to go. So, and my grandparents were definitely incredibly loving, and that was a very, very safe environment. They could try to continue to have contact with me, and they were actually my father's parents. They tried to have contact with me afterwards, but my mother didn't allow that. And I grew up on council estates, moving constantly from school to school, from council estate to council estate. My father was in and out of prison. And so my mother was a single parent to myself and my brother, who was 4 years younger. And she was an alcoholic as well. I call her my mother, but I find that quite difficult to say. She didn't like me, that I know. And My brother, she doted on. Me, I was there to be an adult and just be responsible. If I had to look after my brother, I remember I was always the one that if they came home from the pub, I was awake. They knock on the door at like 11 at night, and I would wake up, or I'd be awake waiting for them to come back. And this was from a very, very young age. My stepfather came into the picture when I was 7. So
Okay.
prior to that, my real father was in and out of prison. The council estate houses we lived in, we had no carpets. It was just floorboards. We didn't have a sofa. We had an electricity. I don't know whether you won't remember them, but they were electric meters where you used to have to put 50p pieces in to get electricity. And I know that that electricity meter, the actual box where the money came out, when the rent guy came round to empty it, or the electric man came round, ours was actually damaged. So they just kept feeding the same 50p piece through to get electricity.
Yeah.
So food was scarce. It was basically either beans
Yeah.
or like a cup of soup with an egg put in it, and I would actually make tea for my brother because I never knew I always had a key to get in, but I never knew if anyone was going to be at home. And so if they weren't at home, then it was up to me to make tea for my brother, put him to bed, and then I'd wait up. And then when my stepfather came into the picture, I feel he was a victim of circumstances, unfortunately, because he fell in love with my mother. He had lived with his mother up until the age of 28 and had never been in a relationship as such. And he took my mother on and 2 children. And he gave a little bit of stability. But he wasn't, he was then he'd fallen in love with a woman who was mentally unstable and an alcoholic. And he was quite an innocent man as such. He showed me kindness. I think he saw that that wasn't prevalent in my life, that my brother received that and I didn't really.
Yeah.
And so he did show me kindness, but he equally got into the pattern then of drinking as well. And, he'd fallen in love with my mother. So, but then the arguments were quite violent. So, quite physical as well. Then when we went to Germany, we actually went to Germany because my stepdad was made redundant during the recession in the 80s. And he wrote off to South Africa, Australia, New Zealand and Germany,
Yeah.
and ended up getting a job in Germany. So we emigrated and I was 10. And I remember thinking, before we left, because I've always loved my music. And I think Bucks Fizz had won the Eurovision that year. And I remember thinking, I wonder if I go over to Germany, they'll be singing in German, won't they? That's how naive I was, but then going to Germany, I mean, it was a huge thing because I remember the journey there. Like my dad I call him my dad, my stepdad had gone over before us. And then we went after him after he'd got, secured a job and everything like that. And we travelled by my mother and with myself and my brother, who was 4 years younger than me, so he would have been 6. We went by train and coach and ferry.
Woof.
Yeah,
That's a whole
yeah,
It's a whole journey.
Yeah. And I remember being at the stations and at the port and with like these suitcases and arriving in Germany at the train station and just with some bits of luggage.
So much question. There's so many questions.
Yeah.
First of all, like, was it like moving to Germany as a young person? Like, what was that transition like?
Horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can categorically say, I mean, I ended up spending 12 years there and I was homesick for England the whole time.
Wow.
So I just never felt that it was for me. But when we arrived, obviously didn't speak a word of German. And my brother went into a different school to what I went into.
Okay.
And so we were separated into 2 schools and we were thrown into the schools, which was actually in hindsight was probably the best thing to do, within 3 weeks of arriving with no German. And my teacher, she was German, but she was the English teacher in that school.
Yeah.
And I remember being stood in the playground and like, because I was the only English person in the school, for kids at that age, it was like they were just jabbering away to me and expecting me to be able to reply. And I'm just stood there going, like this and not knowing what to do, you know. But it was also, I think, it was a novelty for them.
Yeah.
But it's a sink or swim situation. And, you know, when you're that age, your brain's like a sponge. And I actually ended up speaking fluent German within 8 months.
Ooh,
Yeah.
impressive, yeah.
Yeah. It helped partially that my head teacher, she was the one that actually taught English as well.
Okay.
So that helped a little bit. I had a little bit of help there. But even now, if I speak German, I don't translate in my head. I can flip from English straight into German. I think then in German.
Yeah.
And most Germans, when I speak, actually think I'm German. I don't have any accent.
Yeah.
And I take on their mannerisms as well, if you will. So like, I sound completely
Go on.
different. I knew you were going to say that.
Go on,
I was no. Yeah, I can if you want, but I don't know. What do you want me to say? But it's interesting because I've got a friend who is German. I've got a friend here in Manchester, and I was introduced to him by a lot of my other friends, and they'd said to him, "Oh, Helen speaks German," and he said to me, he thought to himself, "Oh, another person who thinks she can speak German." He said, and then when I opened my mouth and started speaking German, he was just like, "She can speak German."
That makes sense.
I mean, we're very close friends now, actually.
Yeah.
Really close friends.
I love that.
So yeah, so from that point of view, I mean, it was hard. I felt different. I've always felt different, really. But then you see, as a result of that, as a result of me speaking German, my parents never learnt the language. So I was the one who would go to the bank and sort out a bank loan if they needed it. I was the one who spoke to my dad's HR department if there was an issue, if he was off sick. And I was 11, 12 years of age.
Jeez.
So I was the one dealing with, you know, things that an adult deals with, because they didn't speak the language. It was all on me. And then equally looking after my brother, you know, if there was an issue at his school or anything like that, you know, I would go into parents' evening with them and translate. So I had a lot of responsibility.
Yeah,
I never felt like, I don't feel like I ever had a childhood as such, but it's given me other skills. I'm not one of these people, I don't look at things, I don't look back at things and think, oh, why me, or worries me. I just think at that time, that's just my path, that's just my journey.
Yeah.
And it gave me, but equally it gave me other skills that, you know, I wouldn't have gained, and it's led me to where I am today. So,
Absolutely.
you know.
My other question that I had in mind was about your dad, your actual dad. Whilst he was in prison, how much contact did you guys have, and what was that relationship like?
I remember going into prison to visit him a couple of times. He wasn't really in our lives. Probably after, how old must I have been? About 5 or 6. I don't recall him being in our lives after that at all. I subsequently found out what happened, you know, what his life looked like after that. But I never had any contact with him after the age of like 5. But equally prior to that, he wasn't really present.
Yeah.
He wasn't somebody that was, you know, a role, well, certainly not a role model, but a figure in my life, really. You know, I just recall, you know, the police raiding one of the council apartments that we were in once, or visiting him in prison. That's all I really recall about him.
Jeez.
You know, so, yeah.
Then your brother as well. Like, did you see any impact on him, you know, living the way you were? Like, did he feel...
I don't believe he did, but I don't think that's something that I can speak on his behalf about. However, he grew up, he's completely different to me, and he grew up much more. So my mother did show him love and care.
Yeah.
As far as she was concerned, you know, he was like sunshine. And I think that goes back to, she saw me as a threat, which sounds very bizarre from saying that from a mother to a child, but that's the only way that I can sort of, after analysing it, think what the reasoning was behind it. Because, I mean, we all know that it tends to be that the daughter is like a daddy's girl and the son is like a mummy's boy.
Yeah.
And, you know, she truly did have care and love for him. He was treated differently, whereas I was just there to to make sure, that whatever she needed, or that if he needed looking after, that was taken care of.
Yeah.
So I do believe he was shielded from a lot. I equally tried to protect him as much as I possibly could. I didn't feel resentment towards him. It just didn't enter my head to feel like that. I don't, I just wanted to protect him really in that
Yeah.
way. So again, that was a responsibility, so if he went out playing, I mean, in those days, there were no mobile phones or anything like
Yeah.
that, and kids would go off for like 2 miles, and, they weren't just in the back garden or anything like that. So I'd have to go and find him, It was
Yeah.
always my responsibility to bring him home and make sure that he hadn't got into trouble, or, so it was an adult childhood.
Yeah. So take me back to Germany. I want to understand what great, obviously I know a little bit about what what it was like growing up there, you being an adult and having those huge tasks and responsibilities at such a young age is incredible. Yeah, talk me through.
We went over there when I was 10, and then my stepdad worked for a manufacturing company called Volker. They make women's hosiery, so that is actually relevant later on if you're never
Oh,
know.
stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned for the next podcast. So he got a job there. So as a CNC machinist, a skilled machinist, in manufacturing, and they were really good actually. They gave us an apartment to live in. We obviously we had to pay for it, but they helped find an apartment nearby. So, which actually, when I say nearby, was actually an apartment for about 6 months that was just down the road from the actual factory.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, alcohol in Germany was even more accessible.
Ooh.
So it was very normal to go to the supermarket and buy a crate of 24 beers. That was just like something that you did. And then the pubs were, they would drink schnapps. I don't know whether you've ever heard of that.
Yeah, I've
It's
heard
like
schnapps, yeah.
It's quite a potent
Yeah,
drink.
it's
It's
quite
like a
big in
cleanser,
Nigeria.
palate cleanser, really, but
Yeah.
like eau de vie. You drink that in the morning. I wasn't seen as anything not normal, if you will. So the alcohol side of things, and I think the fact that my mother didn't speak the language, didn't have any friends, and was quite isolated, I think that was even more of a pressure on her. So the drinking became a lot worse. The violence became a lot worse. Life in itself just wasn't very pleasant. I remember there was one other English gentleman who actually worked at the same place that my dad worked at, and my parents sort of befriended them.
Yeah.
He was married to a German lady, which is also relevant in a bit.
Oh. Yeah.
So his wife was German, he was English,
Mm.
and so my mum and dad sort of like made friends with them, and they had 2 daughters. He ended up coming back to England. So him and his wife ended up separating. He ended up coming back to England, and I remember I must have been about 12 and a half, saying to him, please take me back. Can I come back with you? Will you take me back to England, please? 'Cause I just didn't want to be in Germany.
Yeah.
England, I don't know, it's always had a place. It's my home.
Yeah.
Even I wouldn't say I wouldn't live abroad again, but I would always have to have a base here.
Mm.
So, but I did quite well in school. School was my escape, and then I had some friends. So I remember manipulating, is manipulating the right word, but sort of inviting myself round to theirs, because if I went round to theirs, there was really good food, and they always had a chocolate and sweetie cupboard, and that's something we just didn't have. So, but equally, it was a safe place for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, so so there we then moved from that apartment to another apartment, and he still had his job, same job. And then it depends how much you want to delve into things.
Yeah, like
Because certain things happened then during
yeah,
that period.
I'm happy, I'm here for you to tell me as much as you feel comfortable to sharing with us.
Yeah. I mean, at the age of 14, I went into foster care,
Wow.
and my brother went into a children's home.
What was the main reason for?
That's quite a heavy topic.
Okay.
Yeah. Can we have a break?
Yeah, you can have it. Yeah.
I'm not adverse to people knowing, because at the end of the day, I mean, going through what I went through,
Yeah.
like when it happened, at school, I mean, I lived in a town of 157,000 people, but we were the only English family that weren't in the forces.
Wow.
And it was in all the newspapers.
Jeez.
It was documented, it was reported about.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So
It's big
everybody
news.
knew. Everybody knew what had happened. And going back into school and like people looking at me differently, and like even my foster mums, she used to clean for this older lady, and this older lady went, "Don't bring that girl to my house." And living with all those things, and that's what I'm saying, there's so many things attached to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of value in if you do share it, and if you don't as well. And I think the both. It's not
Well,
right.
that's not sticking to one decision, is it? That's
All right.
you being a diplomat.
Let's for me, the way I see it is like, regardless, like I want to make sure you're comfortable. And if you say to me you're comfortable sharing it, then let's talk about it. Yeah.
I'm comfortable telling my story. It's the first time I've ever told it. It's what the knock-on effects will be. I don't want to jeopardize my brand in how people see me, which is on them.
Yeah.
And I've been judged nearly all my life, but this is my time. That's the only slight doubt that I have. But if people are intelligent enough to look past that.
I think for me, if I'm hearing that and you're from that world, I think it incredibly humanizes your brand.
Okay.
And I think it's definitely a massive differentiator.
Yeah.
Just imagine someone going through something like that and
being who I am, I know.
Like, I couldn't think of anything that's more powerful.
Yeah, I think it's and that's how I feel. So let's go for it.
Let's do it.
But I'll do it in
So welcome back.
Okay, thank you.
We had a little break.
Yeah,
we're back
did.
now.
It was necessary.
Yeah. So we're talking about you going into foster care at the age of 14.
14, yeah. 14, I was 14, yeah.
And then I was asking you about, like, what was the reason you went to foster care at 14?
Like I was saying before, the alcohol side of things, the violent side of things, the arguments became a lot worse in the lead up to that. And so much so that, I was then responsible for trying to protect or go in between the arguments and the violence to try and defuse it. My stepdad wouldn't hit me, so if they were physically fighting, I would literally go in between, try and go in between to sort of like calm it down. And then it got to a stage where my stepdad was almost giving up. He just couldn't take it anymore. And he, at one stage, did try to commit suicide. And he got to a stage where he's just broken. It just really broke him as a man, because my mother really wasn't a pleasant person. She just provoke him and call him names and diminish him as a person and make him just feel like he was worthless. And I was exposed to all that. I saw far too much. I knew too much. I experienced too much, really. Fortunately, my brother didn't, because it's like he was almost like, I don't know, he was oblivious to it, or he was younger, 4 years younger, and he just wasn't as aware really of it. Whereas I'd grown up being aware, and constantly on alert. So then it got to the stage where I was also missing quite a lot of school, because I was being woken up in the middle of the night, when they got back from the pub or wherever, and then I'd have to stay up for another hour to make sure nothing happened. So I missed quite a lot of school as well at the time. And then it got to a stage where my mother started to threaten to kill my father, my stepdad. And and he was almost, asking for it as well, because I think he just wanted to be put out of his pain, which was very difficult to see. So I would always make sure that I stayed up to try and monitor and make sure nothing to that level happened. And then equally, I would hide all the knives from the kitchen.
Wow.
So that was sort of like a responsibility that I thought, if I hide the knives, then nothing bad can happen. And then it was just getting worse and worse. And then they had a major drinking session that I think went all through the night and into the next day. And my brother had been in trouble at school. And I think my mother felt that my stepdad had like picked on my little brother, a little bit about him being naughty at school or whatever. And so that was her reason for starting an argument. And they were arguing really badly. And to paint the picture, it was basically, it all happened so fast, but my stepdad got down on his knees and just said to her, well, go on then, just kill me. Just go and get a knife and kill me. Go on. He said, I've had enough anyway. He said, what's the point in being here? And I couldn't get to the kitchen quick enough and just to get rid of the knives. And I hadn't hidden them prior. And she came in, and she was incredibly drunk, but that's not an excuse. But she came in, and I remember trying to stop her and get hold of the knife that she had in her hand, and I couldn't. And he was on his knees, and she was stood in front of him. I'd gone behind her because I'd been trying to get hold of the knife, and she stabbed him multiple times. I tried to get the knife off her, but the strength in her, it was indescribable that I just couldn't stop her from doing this. And I then ran around, to my stepdad, because he was knelt on the floor, and I just kept saying, please don't die, please don't die. Please, please, please hold on. We had a telephone at the time where we couldn't dial out to anybody else. We could only dial out to emergency services. We could accept calls, but we couldn't phone anybody except for the emergency services. And he was still conscious, like on his knees. And I was just going, please hang on, please hang on. And I ran to the telephone to call the ambulance. And I looked around, and he got up and he walked to the door, which is probably not far, like off this door here, and then just collapsed and died. I couldn't believe that what just happened, really. And then the ambulance came, and they took my mother into custody, because I was the only one that could really speak to them and just say what had happened. And my little brother was taken away by them to hand over to social services, and they took me to hospital because I was just hysterical. I couldn't believe what I'd just seen. And I remember being in the hospital and crying and crying and screaming, and they said, we want to give you a sleeping pill to calm you down. And I was like, no, I refused. I wouldn't let them inject me with anything. I didn't want to take anything. And then at some stage, I remember asking for some headache tablets, because I think I was dehydrated from all the crying or whatever. And then the next moment, after taking the headache tablets, the next moment, I remember waking up in an ambulance, and they'd taken me to a psychiatric hospital.
Wow.
And this was in the middle of the night, around about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I remember, going, well, where am I? What's going on? And they said, we've brought you here because we're worried that you're going to commit suicide. There was a psychiatrist there, and I remember being sat there, and after all, this had just happened to me, and I was traumatized, and he said, you're going to stay here for a little while. And I said, well, why? I said, why am I here? Why, and they said, well, we've nowhere else to put you, and we're worried about you. And so then they gave me some pajamas, and I got into a bed, and there was this other girl in the room. She was asleep. And I woke up the next day, and then a social worker was assigned to me. And I was then, I went in to see the psychiatrist. They called me in and they said, well, I said, I want to go back to England. I said, I don't want to stay here. I want to go back to England. And they said, well, do you have anybody in England that that could look after you? And I didn't have anybody. So, but I kept saying, I just don't want to stay here. I don't want to be here, I don't want to live with my mother, and what's going to happen to me now? And then I spoke to the social worker, came and spoke to me, and she just said, so the situation is that your little brother's in care. We managed to place him into a children's home, so he's looked after. Your mother's being held in custody in a police station or whatever, and they've actually sectioned you now for 6 months here. And the reasoning being that you were at acute risk of committing suicide. And I said, I'm not going to commit suicide. Why do they think that? I said, I'm traumatized. I'm confused and traumatized, but I don't want to commit suicide. I knew that categorically because for me, life is a gift, and I'm not, I would never, I understand that for some people it gets too much, and I understand some people, they can't cope or they don't want to deal with things anymore. But for me, even at that age, it wasn't even a thought in my head to commit suicide. I just wanted to try and make sense of what had just happened and know what was going to happen to me in the future. But to have had my whole freedom taken away,
that must have been tough.
and actually legally been sectioned, so it was against my will. And I know I was only 14. I just thought, it was like a double whammy almost, and so I said, I actually remember saying and remembering the German lady who'd been married to the Englishman who my parents had made friends with, who have 2 daughters. I thought, call her, because she spoke English, you see, as well. Maybe she can help me.
Yeah.
And so fortunately she did. She got in touch with the social worker, and they came to see me in the hospital, in the psychiatric clinic. And I said, just get me out. I just want to get out of here. I said, I shouldn't be here, because equally the psychiatric clinic was quite a scary place. It was, there were a lot of people in there who, were frightening to me.
Yeah.
I got threatened to have my head pushed down the toilet. I was amongst people that I couldn't relate to at all.
Yeah.
And so I just said, look, please help me get out of here. I don't know, maybe, I don't know where. Obviously you need to place me somewhere because I was a minor, but I want to either go back to England or finish my school, because I was in the middle of school, my education as well. And my social worker, fortunately, she was a really lovely lady. She spoke to my mum and dad's friend, the German lady, and the German lady then said, look, I will foster her. So at least I was going to somebody that I knew.
Yeah.
But she said, I can't foster the brother because I've got 2 girls of my own. I'm a single mother, and it'd be too much for me to take on. So they said, well, that's okay, because he's in a children's home and he's looked after anyway.
Yeah.
So they then did everything they could to get me out of there. And I had to go in front of 7 psychiatrists
7.
to prove that I was of sane mind, that I wasn't having suicidal thoughts. And I got out just before Christmas, which was, I was in there for a total of just under 8 weeks. Thank goodness.
Yeah. That's a
Because
lot.
they'd
Even
actually
80 weeks
sectioned
is a long time.
from 6 months. It was a long time, but
Yeah.
it could have been 6 months. And, it was like you had to, while you were in there, I mean, what I found disturbing was the staff would allow the inmates to watch horror films. And they had access to scissors and knives.
Oh,
They had to ask for them.
okay.
But, you know, people, inmates, they were clever. They had a way of getting around things.
Yeah.
Because there was a situation where the girl that I was in the room with, she managed to get hold of a pair of scissors and she was threatening people. And then, so after going through everything that I'd gone
Yeah,
through,
jeez.
to then be in this situation as well was quite, it was like one thing after another after another.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I managed to then my foster mum took me on them, so I went to live with them, with her and her two daughters. She was paid by the government to look after me. But then I was the only witness to what had happened, and I had to then testify against my mother in court on my own.
I want to pause here for a moment. A lot of the conversations we have on this podcast can open things up. And when that happens, it helps to think about how we can actually support ourselves from day to day. Empowered Human is supported by Life Lab supplements. I know the founder, Ben, and I've seen how much care it puts into making these supplements. He's thoughtful about what goes in them and does not rush the process. I've been using the essential range for a while now, and I've noticed a difference, especially in my sleep. If you want to learn more about LifeLab, go to lifelabsupplement.com. And on the days when life feels overwhelming, when your mind is loud and you don't know where to start, we have created the Empowered Affirmation Cards. They are not just words, but gentle prompts with action. Something you can reach for to pause, to ground yourself, and take one step back into yourself. And for those moments when you feel called to step out of your usual environment, this June, we are holding a small, intimate yoga retreat in Bali. 7 days to slow down, move gently, rest deeply, and reconnect with your body. And a sense of inner safety, held in nature with just 8 people. You will find links to all of this in the description below. Now, let's come back to the conversation.
And that was a process. I can't remember the exact timeline of that, but I remember being in court. I remember still at that stage, despite everything, not wanting her to be punished, to a degree that it would. I don't know. I can't really explain my thought process. I just didn't want her, I didn't want to do. I didn't want her to suffer
Yeah.
because I still think I probably at that stage had some slight hope that she would actually like me one day. I don't know. I don't know necessarily what the answer is to that. But they established in court that because what they were trying to find out was whether to sentence her based on intended murder
Yeah.
or on the highest degree of manslaughter. Now, she had 4.9 promille of alcohol in her blood at the time. And as a result of that, they passed judgment that she got the highest manslaughter sentence, which was 4 years and 9 months or something like that. Now, she'd already been in prison for about a year by then,
Yeah.
so that gets taken off your sentence.
3 years. So.
But she was put into a prison with the highest, what do you call them? The
maximum.
The most dangerous. It was a maximum prison, a maximum security prison.
Yeah.
And yeah, during that time, we had visiting rights as her children and went to see her. I categorically knew that I would never live with her again. My brother, however, wanted to live with her when she came out. And he absolutely loved the children's home, by the way. It was some of the best years of his life because he got to be a proper kid. He loved it, and he was amongst children, and it was really good fun for him. I remember him telling me that. For me, my foster mother, it was difficult because I was coming into a home where there were two girls, and her eldest daughter was the eldest daughter, and then I was older than her, so she felt threatened by me.
Oh, well.
So again, it was about me adapting to not create a scenario that could disrupt into something. And I wasn't part of a family. I was just somebody there to accommodate. And, she was kind. She spoke to me, tried to talk me through things or help me understand things a little bit more. And she would take us to visit our mother. But during that period, my mum's psychological state got worse. She managed to get on my 16th birthday, and I don't know how this happened, but I got a phone call. I was at home alone, and I got a phone call, picked the phone up, and it was actually the prison.
Okay.
And I can't understand that they spoke to me on that day. It actually happened to be my birthday, and I was told that she'd got hold of a pair of scissors, she'd cut all her hair off, and she'd stabbed herself in the stomach.
Oh.
And so therefore she got sectioned, she got taken into a psychiatric prison. And while she was there, they established that she had schizophrenia.
Wow.
She was allowed out a couple of times after that on day release to come and stay at my foster mum's home. And it was quite scary, really, because she believed that the prison officers had implanted a chip in her brain and were making her do things, and they could hear everything that she was thinking. And she would bring books that she was reading, and in between the lines in the books, they were like, she'd scribbled in a pencil, "Help me." They're making me do things, and this was all part of her schizophrenia.
Yeah.
But then, they worked together with her, they got her on medication. And then the intent was that when she came out, the German system was very, very good. They actually were providing her with an apartment, and they were providing her with job interviews for women that had been in prison. And my brother wanted to go and live with her, you see. They'd got her schizophrenia under control. She'd sort of she got out earlier because of good behaviour then. And so then when she got out, I was 17 and a half. And I told her that there was no way that I was going to live with her. But my brother was really excited about going back to live with her and being with his mum. And he must have been, so I was 17 and a half, he was about 13 and a half. And she sat us both down, I remember this, and she said, right, I'm going to go for a short holiday back to the UK, about 2 weeks, because one of our half aunties, she said she's got cancer, so I want to go and visit her. She says, but then when I get back, to my brother, she said, I'm going to get the job, and we're gonna live together. And it was like, and he was just so full of hope and everything. And then so she left, and we didn't hear from her for another 6 months. And when we got a letter, so she came back to the UK,
Yeah.
and we got a letter from her, and it said, I couldn't come back. I am now together with another man, and I'm pregnant. So, for me,
Yeah.
her not coming back wasn't that much of a shock, really. But for my brother, who thought he was going to live with his mother again, and she was coming back after 2 weeks, it really did impact him. And the thought that a mother could just dump 2 children in Germany, almost, we were just like dumped there. She wasn't dealing with the consequences. I mean, my brother, it was all set up that my brother was going to come out of the children's home. I was 17 and a half, so I was still in school, I was doing college. But she never for 1 minute thought about what were the consequences of just leaving us there. My brother, he ended up staying in the children's home, but then he got involved in petty crime, like breaking into, they had cigarette machines in Germany, and he broke into a couple of those and then got into trouble for that. And I think the German government just thought, well, now we know where his mother is in the UK, send him back. So, but he was okay with, I think. And then I actually ended up getting a job. I came out of school, and really in Germany, unless you do an apprenticeship, like you don't get to go to work for somebody. it's like a prerequisite to do an
Gotcha.
apprenticeship first. And yet, because of my English, because I spoke fluent English, I managed to get a job in the same company that my dad had worked in, working as a PA to the sales director. However, I'd sort of blagged my way into that job. And I didn't know the first thing about even writing a letter, like typing. Like I could type,
Yeah.
I'd learned to type right, but I didn't know how to formulate it. And so quickly, it became very apparent very quickly that I wasn't qualified. I was underqualified for the job. But they were really great in terms of, they said, look, we see potential in you and we want to offer you an apprenticeship.
Wow.
Now, apprenticeships didn't just get offered out in Germany. You had to have certain qualifications. And I just saw an opportunity and I thought, this is a good thing. So I did an apprenticeship as a commercial administrator for 2.5 years with that company. And that sort of entailed me spending 3 to 4 months in every single department of a manufacturing company to understand how companies run. So, and then I moved out of my foster mum's home. I got myself an apartment, and I'd met somebody who, his dad was in the army. He was an English guy.
Yeah.
And then his whole family moved back to the UK, and we'd been together about 4 years by this stage, and it was always said that we were going to get married.
Yeah.
I was very, very young. And so he went back with his family. I was still working for the company where I'd done the apprenticeship because they'd offered me a job as well. And about 8 to 9 weeks after his family had settled in the UK and he had, we were writing letters at the time because, again, we don't have mobile phones or anything. That's how old I am. He wrote and said, right, pack everything up and come back to the UK and we'll live with my parents. And that's how I came back to the UK. And it was like, yes, finally I'm going back home.
What a journey.
So yeah, that's part of it.
Wow. Thank you for your courage to share that story, because I think it's so powerful, and for being vulnerable as well. For me, like there was a statement, a phrase that you've said a few times now, that trauma doesn't happen to you.
I think a lot of the time, trauma in a lot of different ways is obviously, people measure it differently, and I think your pain attached to that trauma is equal. No one gets to say, well, my pain is more than anyone else's. I don't believe that. But the biggest, the most powerful statement I find is that it happened to you, not because of you.
That's the one.
And because I come across a lot of people who, they carry a guilt around with them, and they want to find an answer as to why did this happen to me? What did I do that caused this to happen? And you end up sort of spending so much time on trying to find an answer to that you actually end up going around in circles and stagnating and focusing on that so much, when you'll never get, sometimes you might never get an answer to it because it wasn't because of you. It happened to you. And there's a big difference in that. And I find that a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
I myself am guilty of thinking, well, could I have done better? If I'd hid the knives, would that not have happened? No, it happened to me. It wasn't my fault.
Yeah. And how important was it for you to separate who you were from what you experienced?
I think what I experienced, it taught me what I didn't want. I did not want any of that. That wasn't who it taught me. I literally lived and saw what I didn't want my life to look like. And it was, because you could say it was a powerful education almost. I mean, I wouldn't really say I think that's probably the wrong way of saying it, but it really, I lived and breathed what I didn't want in my life.
Yeah.
And I was scared for a long time that I would be like her, but it actually, it highlighted to me what I didn't want to be like, how that there must be a different way. And I really, I was really observant. I really
Yeah.
educated myself. I really watched and listened and probably made an informed decision on
Yeah.
how I didn't want my life to look, which sometimes I don't think a lot of people probably get.
Yeah.
I think we all fall into things, don't we? It's very easy just to fall into things. But yeah, maybe mine was an informed decision that there is no way that my life will look like that.
Yeah.
And there is nothing that I can't survive,
I love that.
so, but there's a lot of things that come along with that as well.
Yeah. For me, it's like, I think spoke about it, how like you should never judge a book by its cover. And like a lot of people that will see you will never know the story.
No, no, not at all. I think, and that's okay. But for me, again, I always think like if somebody is a certain way, I'll always think to myself, well, there's probably a whole story behind that. And we're not all privileged to, we don't know anyone's story. You never know what somebody's gone through. You've not lived their life. You've not walked in their footsteps. And I think, unfortunately, today, a lot of things are measured by status, by what you have, how you look. And, that isn't what it's about. I think I call all this fluff.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's I have a nice life. I do, and I like my life. I've worked incredibly hard to get here, and I'm continuing to work. I believe in that. We all need a purpose, and giving back. That's another aim of mine. But what this is, all of this here, is fluff.
Yeah.
Because it's nice to have it, but this is what is integral, and this is what makes you who you are.
Yeah.
And that is a private thing and a personal thing, and I can't judge somebody or make a decision on how they are based on what their outer shell is.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
that in itself tends to be an armor.
Yeah.
So
That's so powerful. I think as well, I'm a massive believer in that everyone you see has a story.
100%.
And just for me, I think the word is grace, and just giving people grace.
Yeah, I mean, I always like, even in the supermarket, so if like the lady on the till or the man on the till, if they're like not smiling at you, or if they're a bit like, like doing their job like that, I think to myself, bless them, they may have had really bad news, or they've been sat there all day and they've not had a break. So just try and make them smile. Just be nice to them. They're human beings, and I think I always think hurt people
Yeah.
because they want you to feel how they feel, but it's not with malicious intent. It's because they don't know how else to deal with that hurt.
Yeah.
And it's a cry for help almost sometimes.
I love that. I think it's important to just think beyond what you're seeing right now and just be like, oh, I wonder what their day has been like. I wonder what news they've heard today, or wonder what.
Yeah, exactly. Be seen, see them,
Yeah.
see people.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge thing, is that.
Yeah.
Let them have a voice.
Yeah.
Treat them like you want to be treated.
Yeah.
We all have feelings. Kindness costs nothing.
Yeah.
It's everybody's valid. Everybody has a place here, and I think so many people get so wrapped up in themselves, or I'm saying I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of it, but if you see somebody that, if you feel someone's suffering or somebody's not feeling great, ask them the question. Be kind to them. Ask them, are they okay?
Yeah.
See them.
Yeah, I love that. I think we all want to be seen at the end of the day. That's what I want to be seen, want to be understood, and want to be heard. I think you giving people space to do that, goes a long way. What would your advice be for anyone that is currently living in survival mode, or going through something that similar to what you've experienced, like right now?
Right now,
if you could give that advice to yourself.
It's a difficult one to answer.
Yeah,
that,
it's tricky.
but it's if they're going through it right now, ask for help.
Yeah.
Look around you. There's got to be somebody that can help you. Don't deal with this on your own.
Yeah.
because it's a lot. It isn't happening because of you. You aren't the cause of it. These are circumstances. These are things that are happening because they're happening around you. They're not, and they're happening to you. But
Yeah.
look for help.
Yeah.
Speak. Don't be ashamed. Don't think that you've caused this and that somebody's going to treat you badly. Again, if you talk to someone about it, obviously be mindful of who you speak to,
Yeah.
but protect yourself. And being hypervigilant and on edge and hyper aware is a learnt skill to survive. And it's something that you automatically train your brain to do. And it will always get better. And a lot of people, I know that's a very sweeping statement, but you can't, there are ways, there is help out there.
Yeah.
I think, it's difficult to talk. It's difficult to admit things in that sense and not feel shame and not feel, that you can articulate that. But just know that there are people that will listen to you.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through this on your own.
Love that. I love the saying that you say as well. Like, you say, talk to yourself the way you would to a friend.
Yeah, that's very powerful.
Yeah.
I've only found myself really, truly been kind to myself properly in the last 3 years. I have always believed that I don't need to be kind to myself. Or, when I say kind, I don't need to put myself as a priority because I'm gonna survive. So I've got so much else to give to others. They come first. They come before me because that's just how I see it, and that's like what I've learned almost, and that's innate in me. So I'm sort of like at the bottom there, and that's okay because I'll survive, but I don't know whether they can. So if I can give them something to help them, then that's something that gives my life a bit of purpose.
That's so selfless. Because for me personally, I'm like, I'll put myself first, then help others. I think majority of us is like
Yeah.
we pour into our own cup first, then pour into others. But yours is like,
I
no,
can't.
yeah.
I've never. I don't know, and it's not. Again, I'm not saying I'm holier than.
No, no, it's just,
It's just that's a learnt behaviour again, and it's just because no matter what, I will survive,
yeah,
and I don't know whether that other person will. So I don't need that, but actually, I realise that I do need it a little bit,
yeah,
and it is important because I didn't have any boundaries in any shape or form, and boundaries I used to look at and think they were negative things, and it was a bit self-indulgent to have boundaries, but actually it's not, because your self-worth is actually tied up with boundaries, and boundaries are important because they're there to protect you from being taken advantage of, or to say, I'm not okay with this. But I'd never felt that I could say that because I'd never learned to say that, because it was just something I had to endure. So that carried on into my adult life and further and further, because I could endure it.
yeah,
I'd learned to endure it. That was just the way it was.
yeah,
So they weren't something that I ever put in place. And then when I realised that, because I've had and suffered for a long time with low self-esteem and low self-worth. Looking at me, you wouldn't think it, but I didn't like myself. I didn't know who I was, and I couldn't say I like who I am, but I can say it now
I love
because
that.
I put those boundaries in, and because I gained some self-worth and understood that that was me respecting myself, and I couldn't expect other people to respect me unless I respected myself, and I couldn't expect other people, not expect, what I was saying to others, I wasn't preaching to
Yeah,
myself,
yeah.
and that's not a great example, really.
I think you have to be the example of what you want to see in the world. I'm a massive believer in that. And just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's also
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. And what we also say in our heads, you know, you can literally talk yourself into a major negative state. And when you think about it, and with that statement, what you said before is if I'm there, so I will be the kind, I'm the kindest person to my friends and try and help and everything. And then all of a sudden I thought, well, why am I not doing that for myself? And that's what I mean by that, and I quite often say, if somebody says to me, if I say something to them that's kind and they'll say, well, no, but no, I'm this and I'm that and I'm not good enough. And I'll go, would you talk to me like that? Would you say those things to me? And it really has an impact on people because you are your greatest asset, and actually you are your kindest friend.
Yeah.
So speak to yourself in a kind way.
Yeah, that's powerful. How did you move from self-protection to self-compassion? Because I hear that you're at a place now where you're like, proud of who you are, love yourself, but like, what are the things that you put? Obviously, boundary was one of them. Are there any other things that you put in place to?
Well, I mean, there's a big difference between self-protection and self-compassion. I mean, self-protection is a learnt skill to survive.
Yeah.
In order to survive, the scenarios, whereas self-compassion is there to allow you and let you live. So that's how I see the difference in those two words. And I think it was around 3 years ago when I put the boundaries in. It was like, I remember I had a shutter moment, and it was like shutters were coming off my eyes, and I'd been blinded to a lot of what was going on around me, and I had a lot of negative energy that was around me. I was being taken advantage of, sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming anyone for this. It was, was seeking constantly, always sought validation from outside, from others, because I didn't know any type of love that didn't have conditions attached to it. So it was okay if people treated me like that. Whereas another friend would say, absolutely, that is not okay. But I didn't question it, and when that shutter moment happened is when I believe that I started to like myself and start to think, I want to like myself. I am worth something. And I remember that in that year, there were 5 people that I are no longer in my life, that I removed myself from, that had been in my life for a long time and I thought were very, very close friends. And I hadn't seen what was going on. And as soon as I started to change and sort of think differently, they didn't like it. And that is a very significant sign of the wrong people being around you.
Yeah.
And so I first started off, this was a really, really cool thing that I think really works, is I started off writing positive affirmations on Post-it notes about myself. And I would read them, and then I would look at myself in the mirror and I'd think, are you a good person? I'd question it. I'd literally go, are you a good person? I'd go, yeah, I am. I am a good person. And I'd say, okay. And then I'd read the positive affirmation and I'd stick it somewhere in my apartment. And I had a couple of these, maybe about 5 to 8 of them around my apartments. And then when my friends came round, they were like, what are these Post-it notes about? And I said, well, they're just positive affirmations about myself that I've written. And I've stuck them there so that when I pass by, I don't necessarily stop to read them, but subconsciously they go in.
Yeah.
After you've read them for a little while. And then my friends started to write. They said, can I write one about you? And I said, yeah. I was a bit like, okay. And then they were such beautiful things that they wrote. And I ended up with about 20 or 25 of these Post-it notes. And I had them all stuck around. And they really made a difference.
That's powerful.
It was really, really lovely to see and actually take in what my friends thought of me.
Yeah.
And because before they could say it to me, but I wouldn't take it in. But seeing it visually and then it being there as a reminder, it really did have an impact on me.
Yeah, I believe in affirmations. Hence why I started creating a decks of affirmation cards.
I know.
That's powerful. So for you, putting a boundary in place, affirmations, we believe in like the things that
Trusting
you hear
my
about yourself.
gut. Trusting my gut instinct as well, and trusting the fact and actually accepting that I'm different and that's okay. Accepting that believing and knowing I am a good person and that I didn't need validation from outside, that I was enough. That was a big thing. It all sort of happened around that time, and really seeing behavior that I didn't actually want around me and feeling that. And I really do feel my gut instinct now and trust it, because it's an incredibly powerful thing.
Yeah. It's so hard though when you starting to put the boundary in place, because people love the version of you that they have.
Not only that,
Yeah.
they equally like to feel that they can give you something that you don't have yourself, and that they're needed. But it's also, a lot of the time, it's a form of control. And I'm not saying it's always negative, but it facilitates, in the wrong type of people, it facilitates a control. It facilitates them being able to manipulate
Yeah.
and know exactly how you are. But when you start to change, that unsettles.
Yeah.
And if they don't like it, and they can no longer, what they perceive as, have you in that vulnerable position that serves them,
Yeah.
then that's when you realise that they're not the right people, because they don't really want you to progress and to elevate yourself.
Earlier, I asked you about advice for other people. This time around, I'm going to ask you, if someone is listening and see themselves in your story, what would you want them to hear without telling them what to do?
Again, that it's not their fault.
Got you.
That that it's not their fault, that they don't have to. First of all, I mean, I'm actually grateful.
Yeah.
I'm appreciative that they're even taking the time to listen to my story, because, everyone's busy and they don't have to. And secondly, I don't have any expectation of them taking anything away from this. But if I have been able to give them a little bit of hope and a little bit of comfort that, they're heard, that they have a voice, that they have a place here, that they matter, then that in itself, that's great. If they can get that feeling from this,
Yeah. It's
Um,
powerful.
mm.
Looking back at your younger self now, what do you feel most proud of her for?
Now that I mulled that question over, because obviously you did give me that
Yeah.
question, and I was struggling a lot to answer that. And I spoke to my husband about it, and what he said actually really put a smile on my face and really, really resonated with me. And I hadn't ever looked at it in that way. And it was the fact that he said to me, what he really admires about me is I'm a strong person in that sense. I'm a survivor, I'm strong. And yet there's that little girl inside of me who comes out more and more often now. She was buried for a long time. But he admires the fact that I have got that balance, that I didn't let that strong woman and that survivor dominate and depress that little girl. He feels that they're in balance, and that, you know, I've allowed both of those sides of me to actually grow at the same rate and be present, and not, the strong woman hasn't just buried that little girl.
Yeah.
So, and I found that a really beautiful analogy.
That's just,
And that is what I'm actually proud of. Yeah, I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of surviving and actually making a life that I'm okay with. That is a nice life.
yeah.
And equally, I know that I've been able, through my experiences, to mentor others and help maybe show different ways of looking at situations, without expecting them to take those
Yeah.
my opinions on. But I have a way of almost looking at both sides of a situation and putting different opinions forward to what maybe people haven't thought about. And I'm quite proud of the fact that I am now accepting myself.
That's beautiful. we've gone from surviving to living and thriving and
Yeah.
inspiring other people as well, like
I
along the
hope so.
way.
Yeah, I hope
Yeah,
so. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Obviously, you do so many things. I've been thinking about this. I was like, okay, how do I like? What title do I give you? Because it's like, okay, this is Helen. This is what she does.
I know. I know.
So if you could describe it, everything that you do in one word, I
Oh
don't
my
know.
God.
How would you sum it up as?
That is really difficult. I mean, if you were to sum me up, I would say I am an enigma.
That's it. I think that's enough. Yeah.
There is no other word for it.
I love that. Earlier you said that you are the brand. You are so
I am.
yeah.
Yeah.
Where can people follow your journey, your brand, what you do? Because I know you eventually want to do so much more, give back and all that stuff. Where can people follow that?
Yeah. I want to set up a foundation going forward. And that's something that at the moment, is in my head and I'm working towards. But wherever I can, I would like to do a bit more speaking,
Yeah.
inspiring. In terms of myself and my work, what I do daily is so varied. I've set up my new business, which is Helen Wilson Collective,
Okay.
which you can find on Instagram. And that's a lot to do with networking, curating, consulting, elevating brands and consumers and but it can take me into all different directions
Yeah,
as
of course.
well. So you can find me mainly on Instagram.
Yeah.
At the moment.
In summary.
And that's going to change. But that is going to change. That's definitely going to change. So I'm open to most opportunities
Yeah.
and I am moving towards being more visible.
Yeah.
I was trying to find the word there.
Yeah. So
in case you didn't think I was visible enough.
yeah, soon come your own podcast, talks everywhere. I can see it. So I think not only like I feel like I've met you over 3 years now, and like just the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, and I love how honest you are about things you feel. I feel like it's so rare in this day and age because everyone's trying to caress you and trying to like, oh no, it's like
no, you see, that's not for
yeah,
me at all.
Yeah,
because I'm a big believer in as long as you do it with care.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's always. But I always say to people, there's a couple of things I live by a few guidelines. I call them not rules. Never ask me a question you don't want an honest answer to. I will always ask you again if I feel that question may hurt you a little bit or have a detrimental impact to you. I'll always say, are you sure you want me to answer that question? So I'll give you the opportunity for me not to say it because I will not lie to you because my integrity, my honesty, I own those and that is my word. And that is something that if you lose that, that's to do with trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't want to BS somebody. And honesty is a huge thing. I want people to be honest with me.
Yeah.
But always handle it with care. And sometimes my delivery might not be, it might be a bit flippant or it might be a bit direct, but my intent is always with care and with, I will read and pick up on how to formulate it.
Yeah.
But if it's something that's, not nothing too impactful, then you'll get straight blunt. You'll get straight blunt honesty. Like like if you said to me, "Do you like my shoes?" I go, "Absolutely not. No."
Yeah.
That you get that side of it. But anything to do with feelings or your heart, it's always handled with care.
The way I see this podcast, I feel like we're gonna have another episode because I would love to dive into becoming an entrepreneur and how you navigated that journey. But I feel like that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
But thank you for today. Thank you for being vulnerable, for your strength, for courage. I think for me it's very, very inspiring, and I know people listening to this as well will be inspired by it. Gone through so much, and I'm honestly it's just grateful. Grateful.
Yeah. Thank you for for giving me the opportunity, and also, I am a big believer as well in I don't expect anybody. I don't have expectations of anybody, because you're potentially setting them up for failure
Yeah,
and
gotcha,
for
yeah.
disappointing yourself. So I don't expect anybody to hear this and feel a certain way or think a certain way. That is yours to have your own opinion on. And this isn't about, for me, this is just about, if I can inspire somebody to think, you can break that cycle, you can get out of it. And I'm not saying that in a flippant way, because not everybody has the emotional ability or strength to break out or deal with it in that way. So there's no expectation about it. But what I would like is that even people hearing this, please treat everybody else with kindness.
That's it.
Because you don't know what people are going through. And it's equally for them as well as for people that have gone through things like I've gone through. Please be kind.
That's the final message.
Yeah.
Please be kind.
Please be kind.
All right, it's a wrap. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Before you go, I want to leave you with this. Conversations like this aren't meant to stay in your head. They ask for care, patience, and the right kind of support. On the everyday level, Empowered Human is supported by LifeLab Supplements, whose focus on energy, immunity, and sleep reminds us that the body needs a steady foundation. And on the days when everything feels overwhelming, the Empowered Human affirmation cards are there as a gentle, grounding practice, offering reflection and small intentional actions when you don't know where to start. You will find everything linked below. If this conversation resonated, consider subscribing. I will see you in the next one.